The winter air in Philadelphia was sharp on the 25th of February, 1957, when a young man on a hunting trip wandered deep into Fox Chase Woods, looking for game. He wasn't supposed to be there, he was trespassing, but curiosity drew him toward a discarded cardboard box near a pile of brush. He thought it might contain a doll, an old toy someone had thrown away. But when he opened the box, what he found was not a doll. It was the small, lifeless body of a little boy, naked, wrapped in a plaid blanket. His hair had been crudely cut. Bruises covered his tiny body, bruises old and new, layered like silent evidence of someone's rage. His eyes were still open. His mouth was slightly parted. He looked like he was still trying to breathe. The police arrived quickly, but the world took longer to notice. Newspapers called him America's unknown child. Philadelphia police called him the boy in the box. Not because they wanted to erase him, because they had no other way to name him. There was no identification, no missing child report that matched his age or description, no family searching frantically to find him. He was about 4 to 6 years old. Light brown hair, blue eyes. He weighed just 30 pounds, malnourished for a child his age. There were scars on his body, small surgical marks, a possible vaccination dot on one arm. His body told stories, but none that could speak his name. Detectives followed every thread they could find. They examined the cardboard box, which once contained a baby bassinet sold at JCPenney. They traced it to a specific store in Upper Darby. Thousands of bassinets had been sold, but nobody could remember who bought that one. The plaid blanket was mass-produced, sold all over the East Coast. Nothing about it led to a home. Nothing about the crime scene led to understanding. Not the pine needles tangled in his hair, nor the shrubs that had been cut down recently, nor the 2 small head wounds. The boy had clearly suffered. His body bore the marks of prolonged abuse, bruising, cuts, scars, signs of starvation. His nails were trimmed. His hair was freshly cut but done in haste, perhaps after death. His hands and feet were wrinkled, as if he may have been submerged in water. Even in death, it seemed someone had tried to strip him of identity. Remove the labels, erase the timeline, make him nameless. And for decades, they succeeded. The police distributed thousands of flyers. They printed his face and mailed it with electric bills. They made clay busts of his head. His photo hung in post offices, diners, grocery stores. Detectives pushed through tips, sightings, rumors, dead ends. The story haunted the community not only because of what was done to the boy, but because nobody claimed him. Nobody came forward and asked, "Where is my son?" One investigator said decades later, "It was like he fell from the sky. No past, no story, just a body." Theories formed. Was he a foster child? A runaway from an institution? A victim of human trafficking? Every possibility seemed to fit, and none of them did. Early on, one detective suggested burying the boy in a public cemetery with a headstone that simply read, "Heaven only knows." That's how hopeless it felt. But then, years later, came a break not from evidence, but from a woman. Her name was Martha, but detectives called her Mary. In the early 2000s, she contacted police with an astonishing claim. She said she knew the boy, said his name was Jonathan, that her mother had bought him from another family, then abused him for years until he died. She said the scars on his body matched what she remembered. She knew about the haircut, about the blanket. She said the box came from her basement. Detectives wanted to believe her. Her story was detailed, emotional, terrifying, but as they dug deeper, it unraveled. Martha had a history of mental illness. Key details in her story didn't line up. There were no records to support her claims. She had no photos, no proof. In the end, investigators said she might have known someone like the boy, but they couldn't prove that she knew this boy. The story faded again. New detectives, old case files. Advances in technology brought New Hope DNA. In 1998, the boy's body was exhumed for the first time. They extracted DNA from a tooth, a mitochondrial profile. It told them he was of European descent, but there were no matches, no close relatives, no missing persons report to match the DNA. He was still nobody. They reburied him in Ivy Hill Cemetery under a headstone that read, "America's unknown child." That phrase, once tragic, became a sort of belonging. If no family would claim him, America would. And then, decades later, What once seemed impossible became a reality. In 2021, investigators exhumed the boy's remains a second time, not just for DNA, but for forensic genealogy. The same method that had caught the Golden State Killer. The same method being used to identify unknown murder victims around the country. In 2022, they finally got a name. After 65 years, his name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Born in January 1953, dead before his 5th birthday. He had a mother, a father, siblings, a family line that stretched back generations. Investigators traced his DNA to a modern relative on his father's side, then matched his mother's name through birth records. But the cruelest part of the truth wasn't that Joseph had no one. It was that he did. His mother was alive at the time of his death. His father, too. He had siblings still alive when he was found. People who shared his blood. A home that could have saved him. But someone took that from him. Detectives announced his name at a press conference in December 2022. Not everyone from Joseph's family came forward, but the world finally got to say his name. For the first time, he wasn't the boy in the box. He was Joseph, a child, a son, a life. We may not have justice yet, the investigators said, but we have identity, and identity is the cornerstone of justice. The case is now being viewed through a sharper lens. Who hurt Joseph? Why was he never reported missing? How did he die? Was it starvation, beating, neglect, murder? And who put him in that box? Alone. Some truths are still buried. But one thing is certain. Joseph no longer belongs to the unknown. His headstone will no longer say, "Heaven only knows." We know. And what the world owes him now, we still have to give. Justice, dignity, and a story that ends not in mystery, but in truth. He was found in a box, but he was not disposable. He was a boy. A child whose short life was swallowed by cruelty, and whose name finally broke through the silence. Now, when people walk past that grave at Ivy Hill, they do not whisper, "Who was he?" They say, "Rest well, Joseph," and the world, at last, answers him. On the 21st of September 1996, in the rural landscape of Gallatin County, Montana, 5-year-old Daniel Houchins left her home in Belgrade early in the morning. She was upset after an argument with her family, seeking fresh air, solitude. She climbed into her white Chevy pickup, wearing blue jeans and a gray sweatshirt, a knee brace on her left leg from a recent dance injury. She drove to a place she found calming, a fishing access site by the Gallatin River, known locally as Cameron Bridge. The spot was peaceful, tucked away a basin of rushing water, willows, marshy ground, reeds. Ideal for someone looking to escape, for a short time, from ordinary worries. That morning, Danny pulled into the parking lot of the site and parked her truck. Her water bottle was found later beside the trail. Her keys were still in the ignition. At around 11 a.m., she was believed to have entered the river area alone. When evening came and she did not return, her family grew concerned. Her mother, Cheryl, discovered the truck unlocked and empty at the site. The water bottle lay in the grass. Danny was missing. Search and rescue teams and volunteers combed the area that evening, but the terrain was treacherous and dark. They paused until dawn. Early the next morning, 2 local brothers who knew the area continued the search after official teams had left. In a marshy area below a willow tree, they spotted her body, lying face down in shallow water, her hair wet, clothing disheveled, the knee brace visible. The medical examiner later listed the cause of death as drowning and the manner of death as undetermined. Few understood then what lay ahead. Many suspected accident. Others suspected something darker. The Houchins family felt something was wrong. Danny was active, an outdoors girl who fished, hiked, skied. She was comfortable in nature. The idea she simply fell into shallow water and drowned felt inadequate. A body of evidence supported that suspicion. Her stomach was full of mud, not just water. There were bruises and cuts on her body. The area didn't necessarily lend itself to a simple accidental fall. Yet investigators at the time stressed the possibility of accident, and the case slowly slipped into the cold archive of unsolved deaths. In the years that followed, Danny's name remained in her community, on missing person boards, in the memories of friends, but the investigation lacked resources. The forensic tools were insufficient, and the official labels remained vague. Death by drowning, manner unknown. Friends of her sister Stephanie said the rumor mill turned to fear. A girl gone in the woods, a killer possibly loose, a community unprotected. School halls filled with whispered worries. Families left porch lights on. Danny's sister grew into adulthood, carrying the weight of unanswered questions, a lifetime marked by sorrow, guilt, and resolve. I promised myself, I promised my sister, I'm coming for you. Donnie, Stephanie said in later interviews. Slowly, forensic science began to advance. DNA technology improved. Genealogy opened new doors. Around 2019, the case was reopened with fresh eyes under Sheriff Dan Springer and outside consultants. Investigators revisited the 4 hairs collected from Danny's body at the time of her death. They extracted a partial DNA profile, sent it to forensic genealogy labs. They built family trees, tracked distant relatives, narrowed the field. By 2024, a breakthrough emerged. Investigators believed they had found a suspect, Paul Hutchinson of Dillon, Montana. According to Sheriff Springer, genealogical research and DNA linkage gave a match. On the 23rd of July 2024, Hutchinson was interviewed by detectives. During the nearly 2-hour conversation, he exhibited extreme nervousness, sweating profusely, scratching his face, chewing on his hands. He was shown photos of Donnie and asked general questions. Had he been at the Cameron Bridge access site? Did he remember fishing there? He denied involvement. Early the next morning, he called the Beaverhead County Sheriff's Office and said he needed assistance, then hung up. He was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound on the side of a road. Hours later, forensic labs confirmed the DNA match was 100% him. The news, announced publicly on the 8th of August 2024, brought both relief and sorrow. The killer was identified, but he would never stand trial. The sheriff's office described the crime as a crime of opportunity. No previous connection between Donnie and the suspect. He was a married father of 2, a 22-year veteran employee of the Bureau of Land Management, with no criminal record. Investigators concluded the attack occurred at the fishing access site where Danny had gone seeking solitude. He encountered her, attacked her, raped her, and then suffocated her in shallow water. The stomach full of mud supported that scenario. For Danny's family, the announcement reopened old wounds, but also granted something they had lacked for decades: truth and recognition. At the press conference, her sister Stephanie said, "Even though this man will not face a jury of his peers, I have no doubt he was the one who forcefully and violently sexually assaulted my sister, then held her head down in a marsh until she choked to death on mud." She added that while the suspect died by suicide, that was the consequence. The family expressed sorrow for the suspect's family, recognizing them as collateral victims of his actions. The case highlights multiple themes: institutional inertia, the limits of forensic technology, the power of DNA genealogy, the grief of families left without answers, the nature of random violence. It also underscores the message: no case is too old, no victim forgotten. When Danny left home that September morning, she probably didn't imagine her name would become a decades-long headline. She probably thought she'd return home before dinner, not become a cold file. She didn't know that what should have been an afternoon of reflection would become the beginning of a relentless pursuit of truth by others. Her life mattered. Her disappearance unsettled a town. And her death, once misclassified, finally gained clarity. Her sister's years of waiting, her family's nights of tears, the search parties in the forest, they were part of a long story of human resilience. It took nearly 3 decades of waiting, of forensic limitations, of reinvestigation, of genealogical breakthroughs. But in 2024, the truth came. And though justice in the sense of courtroom conviction couldn't happen, justice in the sense of recognition did. Officials quoted the case as a model of how cold case units must persist. "We never gave up on finding the truth for Danny and her family," Sheriff Springer said. "We will continue to use every resource at our disposal to solve these cases, no matter how much time has passed." Law enforcement sources noted that the case, once labeled uncertain, had always had red flags. Body found snapped in marsh, stomach filled with mud, location remote, no signs of self-inflicted death. Yet the official classification as accidental or undetermined slowed the urgency. Yet the family didn't give up. Stephanie turned pain into advocacy, pushing for changes in how Montana funds and supervises its law enforcement investigations, how unsolved victims are treated. She sees accountability, not necessarily about the individual, but about the institution, and making the institution better so it doesn't fail other victims. In the quiet hours on the banks of the Gallatin River, the Houchins and Mullet families still mourn. They still scatter Donnie's ashes. They still walk the paths she once walked. But now they do so with a kind of subdued closure. They have her name. They know how she died. They know who did it. The empty space of unanswered years has been filled, not by a trial, but by truth. Donnie's story reminds us of many things. Not all tragedies are solved quickly. Not all victims are found alive. Not all institutions hold the answers. But with persistence, progress, compassion, and science, answers can come. Her case also shows how a family's faith, years of waiting, can ultimately change the narrative, not just for one girl, but for future families watching, waiting, hoping. For nearly 3 decades, the leaves on the willows near Cameron Bridge whispered her name. They may never stop. But now the silence is broken. The name is spoken aloud. Daniel Houchins. She was 15. She loved science. She loved the outdoors. She was brave. She deserved more. And in the end, she got acknowledgement. In communities where darkness hides in the trees and waters we trust, the case of Danielle "Danny" Houchins stands as proof. The water carries memory, the rivers flow with truth, and even when the body is gone, the story remains. She is not just a file. She is a person. And now, she has a face, a name, and a place in history.